Again, it was like God gave me a gift to know how to heal it, you know, and it wasn't until my divorce that I really learned and started integrating that stuff into my day-to-day life until I realized that I didn't need to do it anymore. So if there are players out there that have experienced things like myself, even if it's not, you know, abuse, I know for a lot of kids they need some reparenting, they need some recoaching, and I know how to go and do those things. It's just the players have to be willing to go there, you know. So yeah.
See, our group largely is deals with minor hockey,
Yep.
and I know when I've worked with elite players, it's it hasn't been a case of dealing with issues, personal, deep-seated, rooted issues. And but in minor hockey, you mentioned the parenting factor, and I think families and relationships, and the fact you had a divorce,
Yep.
and that seemed to be a turning point where you sort of came to grips with who you were.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned you thanked your wife. You feel she supported you,
Yep.
and
Not
yet you're
not after the divorce. That was after I had an affair
yeah,
all the way back in like the summer of 2012, 2011. But she stayed with me, and then that's when the talk therapy really increased in intensity.
yeah.
And you know, again, had she not stayed with me, who knows? Hi, Tom.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, had she not stayed with me, who knows where I would have gone? You know, if I would have continued down the path of self-destruction or not. I have no idea. In my mind, I say that I probably would have continued on. But it was that decision that made me realize the choices I'm making and the impact it has on those closest to me, you know. And then after the divorce was when then, you know, I started working on myself at a deeper level. And then now I have nothing but gratitude for her, nothing but love and gratitude for her for again staying with me. Had she not, I don't know. I don't know if I'd be on this call here today.
Well, that's really good. I think Tom and I are one of the few who have lasted 50 years of marriage,
Yeah.
and I never had any deep-rooted issues, other than the fact my mother was quite sick as I grew up, and for about 8 years I had no mother.
Okay.
It was an in and out kind of a relationship for mental health for her.
Hmm.
But I think the importance of, you know, parents and them being working together with their kids on the same page um, is just vital to the growth of a young person.
Yeah, especially with divorced. If they're divorced, you know, like at the beginning of my divorce, there was a lot of tension involved because I was trying to change her. I was trying to get her to be a parent like I am, which only created more toxicity, you know. And it wasn't until we both kind of just put the emotions aside, took ownership of our part in the whole situation, that we were able to actually come together and have, you know, more mature dialogue, more mature conversation. But I think for single parents out there, that's vital. They have to take ownership of their stuff, understanding that they both played a role in the divorce. It's never just one side, you know. And if people are willing to do that, I think it can be a catalyst, you know, into just a healthier co-parenting relationship.
Do you have any advice for adults, parents in situations where the relationship is a single parent? It might be a dad raising the kids or a mom raising the kids. And how how would you advise them to get on track, stabilize their mindset moving forward?
Yeah, I think they would have to, again, no different than what I did. I had to just take ownership. At first, I was trying to carry the all the weight of the divorce, and it was too heavy. It's not all mine to carry, and it was just causing me to go kind of crazy. Then I started realizing, okay, what's mine to hold? What's mine to carry? Can I work on that? The answer is yes. Anything else I have to just leave to her, and whether or not she's willing to take ownership of it or not is out of my control. But again, for me, it was such a big part of it was understanding that I wasn't the greatest husband. I loved her. I just didn't know how to love her based on my experiences as a child. And so I think, again, all too often in that situation, especially in the beginning of divorces, is there's a lot of toxicity and there's so much blaming taking place, so much complaining about what the other person did or didn't do. And again, you're giving up power to change you within that situation because you're putting the focus on somebody that you don't control. So if you can put an end to that, it just frees up a lot of space for you to continue that work on yourself. Again, any type of, if it's a relationship or if it's an ending of a marriage, on both sides, it's both individuals have to be willing to work on themselves. And if they're not, and if they're going to continue to cast blame on the other, then the situation is going to remain toxic, regardless of if they're in relationship or out of relationship. Does that make sense?
Yep, it does. I'm trying to relate my own personal childhood. I didn't have abuse in my childhood, but I didn't have the stability of being a mother, having a mother raise me, being a part of the family. And actually, as you talk and throughout reading about you, I really believe I never really learned to love.
Yeah.
And demonstrate that love and live that love with my family.
Yeah. Because chances are then you were, back then, especially, when you were growing up too, it was still kind of that same mind frame of suck it up, move on, let it go. So you only had your father then. And most men don't know how to be feminine. And what I mean by that is most men don't know how to be soft and hug and love their children. It's very much, I have to be the masculine, which, yes, to a certain degree, but my father was an alcoholic, so he couldn't possibly teach me really anything. He certainly wasn't teaching me how to love himself, how to love his wife, my mom. So it was just chaos all the time. So then us as adults, we got to figure it out on our own because we didn't have that kind of positive male role model in our life, if that makes sense. So for you now to not have your mother, the one that's supposed to be softer, to hold you, give you space to cry, whatever the case is, right? You don't have that now, so you're never really getting that.
Yeah.
And so many men are disconnected or suppressed because it's deemed weak to speak on the fact that we are human too and we have emotions no different than women do.
One of the things that our group has talked about, and I've always advocated, is women bring an emotional intelligence that men don't have. And the recent hiring of Jessica Campbell for the Seattle Kraken, I've said for a few years, the first team in the NHL to hire a woman on their staff, I think is going to have an impact on the culture of the sport and that particular team. Tom and I are fortunate. Tom has been coaching women more different teams at different age levels than I have. He's also coached men, and I haven't coached as many teams at so many different levels as Tom. But I think I may be generalizing Tom here, but coaching women just made me aware of the importance of that, of the emotional intelligence, and not the X's and O's, but the emotional intelligence of coaching and how you make people feel as you coach. And Tom, I'm just going to ask you a question here. you were flipping and flopping with coaching your son growing up, boys hockey, obviously. And then when did you get involved in coaching females? And how did you adapt, find that work for you, learn, whatever?
Well, what happened is after being assistant at University of Calgary all through the 90s till 96, I guess I was there 8 years.
That was male hockey, right?
Yeah, with the U of C men. Then Jim was getting to that pee-wee age, and
Yeah.
I started coaching him. So I coached him for about 6 years there. And that was the coaching I was doing. And then I took early retirement, and there was the job at Mount Royal women available. And before that, there really wasn't any female hockey because that was only second, third year of their program. And I got the job and I spent 5 years there, and I'd never coached, but I taught school. So when the first 5 years I taught, I just did boys phys ed, but the classes were mixed. And then I went to St. Mary's for a few years, and I took a course from Joan Vickers called Gender and Sport because I wanted to know the difference between girls and boys, right? What they could do and all this kind of stuff. And and then I coached Mount Royal women 5 years, and then I went to the Red Bulls and coached in Salzburg. But when I came back, then Sam Holmes got me to coach that Rockies team, the women's Western Women's Hockey League team. And then when I was done there, the Girls Hockey Calgary, they asked me to coach AAA midget. So that's when I got involved with the Girls Hockey Calgary. So I did that, and I've done, now I'm doing the Bantam girls, the U15 ones.
Yeah.
So I've done but that's how I got involved until 2003. I had never, coached like women's hockey, but what was it, 98? There was 8,500 girls playing in Canada. Then after the Olympics, there was 85,000. So it was, a big transition.
Jacob, our group, we've had NHL players on, former NHL players, NHL coaches, international, national Olympic female players. And so we've talked about the gender and coaching in sport. And I just wanted to bring Tom into the talk and then introduce you to Peter. Peter, this is Jacob. I don't know, Peter, if you were able to read the little bio I sent out, but we're going to get into learning more about him. But possibly you can introduce yourself. And then I'm going to get into talking about Jacob, his background and what he's doing now, and how I've managed to connect with him and try to work at serving the good of the game, which is what he's doing. So, Peter, could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Morning, Jake. Yeah, I did. I did get a chance to read the bio, so a little bit familiar, but I was anxious to learn more. I'm in Connecticut. I'm in the States. Coach for, well over 30 years. Everything from youth hockey to AAA to prep school. Just retired as a head coach of an NCAA program. Coached girls high school hockey, worked for an NHL player agent, scouted in the USHL. So done a little bit of everything, really.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Nice to meet you, Peter.
Pleasure. You as well.
Well, Jacob, I'm going to get into, we've read your bio, and I've read in particular the Power Play app, and you did an interview there, which gave me a lot of information. And what I'd like to do is your story growing up and becoming interested in playing hockey, and then how you ended up advancing and growing relative to the number of teams you played for, and actually got to the level of being able to be involved with the Anaheim NHL team. And yet you didn't start out on ice. You started out on rollerblades.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
talk a bit about your upbringing and in particular related to the sport of hockey.
Yeah, for sure. So, me getting involved in hockey, I was born in Arizona, and immediately after we moved up to Leduc, Alberta. So my mom, both my sisters, and my oldest brother were all born in Leduc, Alberta. So we lived there for 3-4 years before moving down to the desert in California to be closer to my grandma's illness. She was not doing well, and so we moved close to help out and everything. But yeah, I grew up in rated the 4th worst city in all of California. Small little town called San Jacinto, Jacinto. And we were about 20-25 minutes from Palm Springs. So certainly not the the parts of California that everybody thinks about in regards to the beach and whatnot. But the beach growing up was probably about 2.5 hours away. The closest highway was 35-40 minutes away. And so, yeah, we didn't have any ice in the deserts. And so luckily we had 2 roller hockey rinks in my hometown. And so we started out playing there or just playing in the street behind our house and just collecting as many kids as we could from the neighborhood to come and join us. And we were able to build it up to, I don't know, 15 to 20 kids would come out and join us. And I'll never forget, the local newspaper caught wind of it and they wanted to come out and do some interviews and do an article on us and everything. So I did roller hockey until about 10, 11 years old. And then, ice began then to gain in popularity in California. Obviously, as soon as Gretzky came to Los Angeles in '88, that really helped to boost ice hockey in the area. And so, yeah, so we made the switch to ice at about year 98, 99, and started out playing in Riverside, California, playing just rec level there, and then eventually went to Squirt. And, I had always had, I guess, good skill, but, obviously had to work at it. And it wasn't until probably age 14 where I realized, okay, maybe there's something I can do with this sports, and again, knowing the things that I went through as a child, that you guys read about there in that article, hockey was an escape for me. There was a lot of dysfunction at home, a lot of trauma at home, and so getting to go out on the ice and be artistic to a certain degree, that was my way of expressing myself, So I was just fortunate that I was good at it and I had a work ethic. And again, I would start going to showcases up in Langley, British Columbia. At about the age 13, 14, both my older brothers were playing, and so they would go along as well, and they were kind of my protectors as I was on the ice with really old players, but I had good size and good ability. And then when I was 15, I moved away from home to play junior B just outside Portland, Oregon, in the Northern Pacific Junior Hockey League. I don't even know if that's around anymore, but it was quite the experience. And, again, just growing up, I had the Disney, I had the Mighty Ducks movies to watch and everything. And to be honest with you, I was always a Detroit Red Wings fan, never a Mighty Ducks fan. That's for sure. And I remember when I did sign with Anaheim, I lied to all the reporters, telling them that I was a Ducks fan growing up. But yeah, I wound up playing in the North American Hockey League for the Texas Tornado back in 2006, and then got drafted into the USHL by the Lincoln Stars that year, and would go and play 2 seasons with the Lincoln Stars from 07 to 09. And then I'd always wanted to go and play at Boston College after going to Boston as a squirt for a tournament. We went to a BC Eagles game, and I remember being there thinking, yep, this is where I want to go to school. And I'd gotten my offer from Northeastern, and Jimmy Hayes if you remember the name, Jimmy Hayes. He was my roommate my first year in Lincoln, and he's now my second year in Lincoln. He's now at Boston College, and they were looking for a power play defenseman. And so he talked to Jerry York about me, and had Jerry York come and watch a week after I got my offer from Northeastern. But I played so bad defensively that weekend that I had to go up and play forward. So needless to say, I did not receive an offer from Boston College. Wound up taking the offer at Northeastern, and then obviously would play against Boston College. And remember going through the handshake line after the weekend and talking to Jerry York and him saying very nice things about my game. And so yeah, my freshman season was done at Northeastern, but I was still there going to school and everything. And that's when I received my first offer from the Washington Capitals. And at that time I was with Newport Sports, which is one of the biggest agencies out there. And my agent wanted to get me more money. Washington wasn't willing to offer me more money. And then Anaheim had caught wind that I received an offer, and their original plan was, because I'm from California, was to bring me into Anaheim during summer, show me the facilities, and then make an offer. But because they had heard about Washington's offer, they came with theirs right away. And before you know it, I was signing a 3-year entry-level deal with Anaheim after my freshman season, and went straight to Anaheim for the remaining 7-8 weeks of the season, which took a year off of my contract. And so then I had 2 more years, and that's when I realized the importance of the mental game and how I lacked any and all mental skills. Everything I had, it was all physical, obviously resiliency and everything, but I was the go-to guy on every team that I had played on up until that point. And then now I was surrounded by guys that were the go-to guy on every team they played on. And what I lacked again then was mental skills, consistency, and these underlying belief systems started creeping up that I didn't belong here. And, I had an NHL contract right in my hands that proved that I did belong there, but I got lost in being a victim. And then I'd go on and play 10 years pro. Got traded my second year to Colorado, which is what led me to here in Cleveland, where I currently live now. And then I would play 7 years over in Europe across 6 different countries. So that was a larger nutshell, but still a nutshell in regards to my hockey journey.
Peter, thanks for the details. You didn't write all of that in there, and I'm sure glad to hear it.
Yeah.
And being born in Leduc, but not really Alberta raised. You were born in Canada, right? You have Canadian.
No. I was born in Arizona.
Okay.
And then 11 months later, my younger sister was born in Leduc. So we must have moved right away after I was born.
Yeah.
Well,
I played with in the International League with a guy from Leduc.
Okay.
And he always used to say he was from L.A. Well, I played for L.A. He would say that all the time. But when you're talking to Tom and I, we're Alberta raised and kind of thing. I was born in Saskatchewan, terribly cold province. But one of the interesting things is the number of American players that have advanced in the game, and like yourself, didn't start on the ice. They started on rollerblades. And it's really an interesting story that you should be able to go that far. Now, in reading about you, you mentioned you were a pretty big guy, and when you got playing pro, you had a factor there where your role wasn't going to be the offensive defenseman and the power play leader, but your role now might involve fighting, which didn't fit your traits and gifts as a hockey player. And that, not wanting to and being able to adapt that role and be the player you could be. I'm just curious about how everything added up to how you could cope with things and be the best you could be, competing, not necessarily fighting, but being able to find that point. Maybe it wasn't possible being 6'3"
Yep.
and over 200, about 215 pounds as a player. And if it's not in your psyche, and I've known many good big players that didn't fit that mold, they were more skilled, and in days gone by, those players did not get to play the roles they've earned. And right now, there's two lines in the NHL. You want to be on the first or second line, and you sort of have to fall into the other role and the numbering the defenseman. But this is where you talked about the mental game and being able to adapt to your environment, whatever it is. And your background, as trouble as it was growing up, and the progress you've made to reach the point today, it's actually amazing. But I would like to get into the getting into the mental training side that you maybe would have benefited from earlier. And in fact, at some point when you did finally reach out for professional help, it helped you come to peace with who you were and how you're going to function. So I'm not sure how you can talk about that, but I've given you a whole framework, a boatload of different frameworks that you can go from.
Yeah, so I would say, going back to my first year with Anaheim, there had been about 5-6 preseason games that had already been played, and I hadn't played a game yet. Guys were getting sent down, guys were getting sent back to juniors, and I was still there. And I remember the day before I played my first preseason game, is we were there in Anaheim practicing, and I got told I was just going to be shooting on the goalies while 2 power play units went on to the other side. This rink had two sheets, and I was on one side just shooting on the other goalies, and the other side was the power play guys. And I'm thinking, what in the heck am I still doing here? None of this is making sense. Got in the locker room and got told that I would be joining them to go to San Jose and then Vancouver the next day. And eventually got told I was going to be playing. So I played in that game. I started the game. It was sold out, which is crazy for a preseason game. And I scored a goal on my first shot and had an assist on the power play. So 2 power play points. I was on top of the world. Up to that point, Cam Fowler, who's still playing for the Ducks, which is amazing, he was like my competition that year. He hadn't had any points as an offensive defenseman yet, and he had played 4 or 5 games. And so I was thinking, okay, this is it. I made it. Very next day, we're in Vancouver. I took warmups. That was it. Got undressed, went up to the press box, and then got my text saying to go and see Bob Murray. And I knew what that meant. I knew I was going to get sent down. So now I'm in Syracuse in the American League. And that's where that question, or more not a question, it was, this is how we want you to play. We want you to play a more physical game. You have the size, you have the skating ability to play that way. We're going to need you to be more physical. And it didn't necessarily mean that I had to fight, but obviously being a bigger guy, at some point that question was going to come my way. And I would say that my demise, my window of opportunity was probably right there. Had I been more open to expanding the way I see myself as a player, then perhaps I could have had a career in the NHL. But because I was resistant to trying to be that player, that's what, I wound up getting traded, wound up over in the second Italian league, which was my first year over in Europe. And I didn't even know there was a first Italian league, so needless to say, I never wanted to be over in Europe. I'm grateful for those years. But, so had I had some type of somebody to just talk to back then, now I understand where my fear came from in regards to playing that physical game. I understand that was all deeply rooted in my childhood. But at that time I didn't know. But if I could have had somebody that could have guided me into that more of an expansive mindset, then perhaps, again, I would have been more open to at least trying, but I didn't even try. and that's on me, and I take ownership of that now. The me in 2011 when I got asked to play that role would have been blaming, would have been complaining, and that's what I did. I didn't take ownership of the role I played in, me not having a sustainable career at those high levels, the things that I worked so hard to get to. And so now with the work I'm doing with players, mental performance and emotional control, is at some point they're going to face that similar situation, and they need to rest in the knowing that just like all of the skills that they currently possess and had to be intentional and consistent in working on, they can take that same mindset into cultivating other skills as well. And if they're not willing to do that, that's fine. Not everybody's going to, but you need to understand that that might limit your ability to play at the levels that you say you want to play at, and again, it's going to take time. There's going to be some discomfort, but we know that when there is that discomfort, that's where the biggest growth takes place, so that was just something I lacked. I lacked any type of mental guidance. I didn't know I needed it until I got to the NHL level. Because every team prior to that, I had the skills to stand out, to get the points, to be that offensive guy. And then once I reached the NHL level, the game was asking more of me. I didn't realize then that what got me to that level wasn't what was going to keep me at that level. I had to be expansive, but I wasn't. So that's eventually what led me over to Europe. And once I started working on my mindset, then I was able to climb to respectable leagues over in Europe, Finland, Czech Republic, Sweden, and so that I'm proud of, certainly. But again, I rest in the peace now of knowing that life was never going to be a career in the NHL for me. It was going to sign that NHL contract just to create a platform for me to come and do things like this, to share my story, and to ultimately help players, regardless of what age they are.
Jake, I got your story reminded me. Like, I just went to the World Championships in Prague with Terry Johnson, who's about your size.
Okay.
So, anyways, he ended up in Quebec, and he was in the American League, and they called him up for his first game, and he's a defenseman. They played him on left wing. It was one of those games where they're playing, I don't know if they're playing Philadelphia or something like that. So they, the first line that was on the ice was all huge guys.
Yeah.
And he says he's playing left wing. He said he'd never even minor hockey ever played forward. So he's asking guys where to line up on the face-off, all this kind of stuff. And but then he ended up playing in St. Louis and Calgary and Toronto. And part of his role was to fight, not all the time, but he was a big, tough guy.
Yeah.
And then another thing, we were talking about the roller hockey. I coach these Koreans every summer, and a lot of our guys at the university were playing for the Rads, the roller hockey team, and that pro league they had.
Yep.
So every once in a while they come and skate, with the Koreans. And I remember one guy skating, then at the end trying to stop, and he hit his feet together and went flying into the boards, because playing the roller hockey all summer, his coordination was just wacko. So interested in that transfer. What do you feel, like when you go from the roller to the ice?
Yeah, it's a massive difference, and growing up playing it. And as soon as I made the transition over to ice, everybody told me to never put roller skates on again. It's going to have an impact on your stride. And so certainly then, but now all I want to do is rollerblade. Where I live in Cleveland, there's a Metro Park system of like 450 miles of just paved trails or dirt trails. And so I take my son, we go down there and we rollerblade. And I assistant coach on his team. He's only 8 years old. And I know that if I have a heavy week of rollerblading and then I go and get on the ice, I feel like I'm going to fall over. It's such a different feeling. Now I know my stride is my stride. It's not going to change regardless of how much I'm rollerblading or not. But what I do know as well is that if I did go back, I probably would have kept on my rollerblades, because in regards to cardio, there's really nothing off the ice that's going to translate. But
It's
I
the same
know,
muscles, eh?
yes, but yeah, if I'm rollerblading, it's the same muscles for sure. It's obviously it's a little bit of a different feel, of course, but to get that heart rate elevated, of course you can do that in other areas of cardio. But I realized, you know, when I was with Anaheim, when I was at Northeastern, when I was in the USHL, the amount of cardio we would do off the ice, I felt like was just depleting me of vital energy that I needed for on the ice, especially when I was training with Anaheim during summers in Anaheim, trying to prove myself. We did so much stuff where I was on the verge every day of throwing up. So I never
Yeah.
showed up the next day feeling optimal, feeling good, you know.
Well,
So
yeah,
yeah.
you bag skating and you deplete everything.
Well, I would have been fine with just bag skating on the ice,
Yeah.
but it was what we were doing off the ice as well that was, again, just leaving me. And I didn't know how to properly recover back then either. Now I know,
Yeah.
but now it doesn't matter.
Well, I think I was doing, I coached SAIT during the 80s, the men's team. It's college here. And we had the hockey school, and Randy Gregg up in Edmonton, he had a company with rollerblades, and we'd never seen them before.
Mm.
It was always roller skates. So he got a hold of me and said, you know, you want to rent them and be part of your program as a guy's rollerblade. So he gave Murray Heatley, Danny's dad, was coaching with me. So he gave us both a pair of rollerblades. And I think we were the first ones in Calgary to ever to be. So we were skating, you know, in the same thing on bike path downtown, and people are looking at what in the heck are those?
Well, before we go to Peter, I just want to let you know when I was teaching phys ed, I had a rollerblading unit. We brought in rollerblades. I felt it really helped them learning to stride and glide. The mechanics is different than on the ice.
Mhm.
The surface is different, but I really felt that hockey players traditionally couldn't skate. They pounded the ice. They didn't push to the side and bring their balanced leg back under their body. So I spent some time utilizing rollerblade because it was fun and they could play roller hockey on tennis courts, which we did, and they loved it. And we also had some nice jogging paths, paved paths that they could rollerblade distances on.
Mhm.
So it was a good cross training kind of tool. So Peter, go ahead. You had your hand up.
Yeah, Jake, I just had the question for you. Just talking about the rollerblading reminded me of back when I was coaching and recruiting at prep school. Florida and California kids, really skilled, really skilled. But then you went to see them skate, and there seemed to be something lacking. Now that was early. That was back like in 2003. I'm going back to that point.
Mhm.
But once the years began, their skating began to improve because they kept the skill piece up, but then they started getting like some more formal, I guess, skating lessons in that to make that transition with the stride and things Wally's talking about. Did you do any of that? And how did you transition so that, because I mean, your skills were there, which you kept those, but at some point you also had to skate well enough so that you could get to those incredibly higher levels that you earned.
Yeah. So I think early on, so again, made the switch. I don't recall if it was 10 or 11. I mean, that's irrelevant. And um, it was my skill, my stick handling skills, my shooting ability that allowed me to flourish in those beginning years. But then I think I quickly began to recognize, okay, this is a different game than the roller hockey game. And a lot of it is skating based. So I was fortunate at that time that both my brothers were private lessons. They did private lessons. They worked at the rink that I grew up playing in. So we got free ice every morning from 6 a.m. to like 7:30. And they were my power skating coaches. And so that was all we did was just power skating. 1 second, guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I had a call coming in. And so I worked with them relentlessly, literally like C cuts, just C cuts to start out. I would do C cuts with a weighted vest on with ankle weights on, 5 laps forwards, 5 lap backwards, and then we'd get more into technical stuff. But then I also had, at that time, I had the same teammate for like 5 seasons in a row, and his mom was a figure skating coach, a very high level figure skating coach, where she now works for Team USA. They started something like in Colorado where they brought in like the top 3, top 4 figure skating coaches in the country to just try and breed gold medalists. And I was fortunate that that is who I got to work with for just one summer. But that created a lot of confidence in my edges, not only speed and power, but how I can control that. Because in my opinion, speed and power mean nothing if you can't control it. And so, yeah, just having that kind of base, my brothers, and then this lady to help me out as well. That's ultimately what allowed me to play at the high levels, is because of my skating ability.
The other thing too with all this, right, is I always feel like there's motivation, right? You talk to any younger player at AAA that has skills in that, and they're always, yeah, I'm motivated, coach. I want to do it. But then the next piece is having the discipline to actually continue to motivate, do the right things when maybe somebody else is taking a day off or whatever it may be. And then you have so it sounds like you really had the motivation, you had the physical discipline, and it was a mental discipline that you reached out when you realized that, hey, I need this. How do you, just a question, how do you think we can get that message across to those younger players? Because it's not that difficult. They talk about being motivated. Okay, discipline. So discipline is going to mean, hey, you know what? You got to be lifting the weights. You got to be on the ice. You got to be doing all those physical things, which players seem to buy into, right? Like, because that's tangible to them.
They can see it. Yeah.
Yes. Whereas the mental piece, I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm okay with that. But not knowing that, just like, hey, I don't use the backhand every time, but there's a situation where I'm going to need to use the backhand. And if I don't have that tool in my toolbox, I can't use it. I feel like it's the same thing with the mental aspect of it too, is you might not need it all the time, but when you do need it, you have it there to use. So I just, that's not a struggle, but just a question, how to get that point across, that it is as important, especially in today's world, as the physical part of the discipline.
Yeah, here, give me 1 second. I'm low on battery. My charger is right here. I just want to charge it. So I would say, that's something I think about all the time. Real quick, I'll reflect on my own experiences here. I remember my first year when I was there in Syracuse, the captain of the team, both assistants, everybody coming up to me, the coaches consistently wanting to have talks with me about, you've got $1 million legs. But what I lacked then was that $1 million mindsets. People constantly telling me things, trying to give me messages that I was closed off. I was shut off. At that time, I was thinking, what do you guys, I've got an NHL contract. There's nothing wrong. And it took catastrophe, for me to realize that something was wrong with myself. I had to start working on myself, and it wasn't the physical then, it was all the mental. And so my hope is that I can put a message out there to get players to be more preventative, more proactive, opposed to being reactive when it comes to their mindsets. And I think right now everybody is waiting for catastrophe, waiting to hit rock bottom, waiting to be benched, to be sat, to be traded, to be cut, to be waived before they start working on their mindset. But by then, it's not that it's too late, it's just far more difficult to start then, because now you're coming from a place of not feeling good enough, a place of anger, frustration, whatever. And so in today's society, I think so many players, regardless of what level they're at, they're lost in being cool instead of being good. And I think social media is ruining a lot of the game currently. And if we could get some of these bigger platforms to start speaking on the importance of mindset training, I think you would see it start to shift. But until then, I think every player is going to have to learn, or unfortunately, so many of them are not going to learn, and they're going to continue to be a victim to their mindset. It's like you said, it's the physical side. Everybody can see that, no different than if you get a physical injury, right? You get told, okay, in 6 weeks, you're going to be able to get back on the ice. In 6 months, you're going to be recovered from ACL injury. But when it comes to the mental training, there is no light at the end of the tunnel. The light is in the work. It's in the day-to-day work, you know? And so my work and what I do now is, I don't want to be working with players for too long. I want to provide them with real value, with true value, and guide them back to themselves to cultivate a healthier relationship with themselves. And so it's just daily practices. And the best part about the mental training is that it does not require the same amount of time as the physical training. If you want to get bigger, faster, stronger, you've got to be in the gym, you've got to be on the ice for hours. But if you want to improve your mindset, it literally takes 20 to 30 minutes a day, and that's it, you know? But again, how do we get people to be more understanding of that? I think the shift is happening. I think you're starting to hear more kids are starting to, you know, work on their mindset, you know, get mental performance coaches, whatever. But it's just happening at such a slow pace, you know? So I don't know. What I do know as well, after being in this space now for the last 6 years, is that it's very trendy right now, mental performance. And so I think there's a lot of people coming in that are trying to reinvent the wheel, that are trying to make it far more complex than it needs to be. I think players need simplicity. I think they need practical and applicable tools. And it's no different than the agency world. There's a lot of scum out there, and I think that scum is starting to creep into this space. And again, I don't know if that answers the question. I don't know if I have an answer to that question.
No, you do. I mean, I think it's dialogue. I think it's exactly what you're saying here, right? I mean, and I think that'd be really great. I should know this from your bio, but do you do any speaking at like universities, colleges, universities?
I would love to, certainly. But to be honest with you, I think the speaking engagements are a part of the problem as well. Because I think they're so highly motivational. There's a lot of talk about what to do, not enough talk on how to do it. So these highly motivational speakers, yes, there's value there. I'm not saying there's not, but motivation is short term. It's ever fleeting. It's people are in constant search for more. So I like to view it as we need to be inspiring these people, and you inspire them by providing them with how to do these things. You know, no different. Everybody's always talking about the Mamba mentality, Kobe Bryant's mentality, right? But nobody's providing any context into how. How can I be like that? You know, I've read so many sports psychology books, mental toughness books, and it's all, in my opinion, it's all crap because it's too many pages and it's too motivational. We need inspiration, and people need like guidance on how to do this stuff. And so that's what I had in mind when I wrote my book, was that. But to go back to your question, I've contacted so many, if not every single NCAA school, Division I, Division III, men's and women's, and they all understand the importance of mental performance training, but none of them prioritize it in their budget, which to me is crazy. Because I know any struggle that the players are going to experience any season, it's all going to be mental. Of course, they're going to have physical injuries that are going to happen, but your mental can help you to heal faster too. You know, so it's unfortunate because I know these schools have so much more money that, you know, they wouldn't go and, you know, not have the strength and conditioning coach in the budget. They wouldn't not have food on the road on the budget. You know, in my opinion, the mindset is the most important thing. We have a mind, we have a body. We've got to be working on both, you know.
I agree 100% because I mean, in my sense, you're preaching to the choir. I mean, we spent so much time with our players on that kind of stuff. Just in conversation, it's okay to be aware that you think there might be an issue, right? It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you less of anything. Honestly, it probably makes you smarter than some of the other guys because you're willing to address it.
Yeah. And when it comes to what you were saying, like the motivation, you know, the discipline, I think the discipline's the bigger one because as we know, motivation comes and goes, you know. But when it comes to discipline, I think so many players lack discipline because they lack clarity on where it is they want to go with the sport. You know, and when you have when you can clearly recognize where you want to go, regardless of what level that is, that to me creates the discipline, that creates the purpose and the direction, the reason, the excuse for showing up day in and day out. When it's go time, it's go time. But so many players don't give themselves time to analyze that and try and get clear on where they want to go, and so again, through that as well, it's far easier to be distracted and to be persuaded. And we know there's plenty of distractions out there, and there's a lot of people that want to come along, different situations that will try and persuade you to get you off of your path. But again, when you know where you're going, does it necessarily mean you're going to get there? No. But if you know where you want to go, it's so much easier to say no to those things, and understanding that those things are always going to be there. Wait until hockey's done, then go participate in that. And I didn't know that. I said yes to everybody. I was lost in people pleasing, but yeah, it's like I said, it's a challenge because so many people won't ever think that anything's wrong with them until something terrible happens. And that terrible thing might come within the sport, and it might also come outside the sport, and that's why then they're so reactive to the situation.
Jacob, I've got a real story here about there's a stigma about mental training.
Yeah.
And I encountered it last year, assuming that it would be easy to introduce two teams at the U13 and 15 level. But I noticed in one game that one of the U13 goalies was a basket case when she let in a goal. And she just literally dialed everything out. And she was a great goalie, but she couldn't handle getting scored on. And over the years, sort of, I discovered the problem seemed to be related to making an excuse, and it was the team's fault. And this came from the parents.
Yeah.
So I sat down with Tom goalie's parents of the U15 team because and I shared, I wanted the older team's parents there because they're goalies, they're mature, a few years older, and I talked to them about mental training and how important it was, and this tool of coping with what bothers you, which is a goal getting scored on, and playing with it. And I believe that Tom's parents took it to heart and possibly went and sought outside help because her play improved and stabilized. And she never had problems, just a couple of technical things that we felt she had to adjust. And that is stay up longer in her stance versus going down too soon.
Yeah.
But the other goalie's parents, the one word got back to me actually recently. They made a joke of what I was trying to do, but they don't need a shrink, they said. So that's what I experienced. And I know as a coach, I've always thought the coach has to be the sports psychologist. Dave King, back in the national team days, we had Cal Botterill full-time with the national team, and an absolute gem, and that's Jen Botterill's father. And Dave used to say to me, the players don't need a mental trainer, the coaches do. And it's true. It's all about stress, how you cope with it, and how you deal with it. Now, some of the stress might be deep-seated. That may take more help and indeed therapy. But plain and simple mental training to me is obviously a skill that can be dealt with like physical skills that are learnable and trainable, but nobody really taps into them.
Yeah.
And I think that's on coaches to a degree, but Tom's hands up. Go ahead, Tom.
I wonder, Jake, did you ever run into Paul Henry You're up there.
Doesn't
He
ring a
worked with
bell.
the Red Bull players.
Oh yeah, no. So I never played. I wanted to play in Salzburg, but never played there and never played in Munich. My only experience in Germany was second league until my contract in Finland started, and then I got to play with Nuremberg at the Spengler Cup, and then in Austria, I never played in that league.
Okay, yeah, I know he worked with a lot of NHL guys too. He's
Okay.
just a good guy.
Yeah, Paul was I coach in 3 Spengler Cups, Jacob.
Yeah, I did see that in your bio. I played in 2.
Yeah, and Paul was a friend of Dave King's. He actually picked the teams, and he came on the trips, and I was a roommate with him. And he actually is a psychiatrist working in severe cases in institutions, prisons, and otherwise. But he's been a scout for many years, and he really became a huge part of the national men's program over the years. But he's been doing what you've been doing. Like, I met Paul, I think my first Spengler Cup might have been in 87. And it is something that's so important. Now, Peter, I think the coach is the one who can dictate what you're going to do or you're not going to do. And there's an art to getting players to buy in. And Jacob, we've used the term the art of coaching, and being a psychologist as a coach or even as a mental trainer outside, the art is being able to do the right stuff, the right amount, at the right time. So I don't know, Peter and Tom, I was going to ask you the question, in your lifetime of coaching, what have you done formally to get better at that and to get it applied?
Well, me, again, I've read on it like other people, I guess, like we all do that. I've also during COVID, we spent a lot of time bringing people in. We had a team Zoom. We started 4 days a week. Then as it became more real that we weren't going back, because that whole year we never went back and played. So we created all kinds of team challenges that the guys did that they bought in with, like video challenges. They would take turns doing it. Then we'd meet on Sundays and they would show that. But I brought in all kinds of speakers from all walks of life, including psychologists and everything else. But one of the things, I think I want to mention from what you experienced, I think that people are very uncomfortable with whatever is unfamiliar to them in their life. Right? Now, we'll buy into when you sit with a coach, right? And this coach says, listen, you got a good skill, but you got to get stronger. You got to get into the gym and you got to get stronger. Like you'll buy into that right away because it's a familiar thing. We understand, okay, so many reps, so many exercises, like Jake, like you were saying at the end, I see this, I see exactly what it is. And I'm going to use that every single day. But the mental aspect of it is something that, like we were talking before, you're not necessarily going to use every day. And we can agree that we have a physical weakness, but we struggle with agreeing that we have any kind of a mental weakness, and not in a negative way, but just like you need to strengthen your body physically, yeah, you need to strengthen your body mentally as well. And I think that is the challenge, because you hear it all the time. Hey, I got this skills coach. Oh, he's great, or she's great. Oh yeah, we go to the gym, we lift weights, we do that. Nobody talks about, yeah, but you know what? When my kid's a peewee or a squirt, and when they lose the game, man, they're down. I can't get them out of it. Nobody talks about any of that stuff, right? Because we grew up, like if you grew up like in my generation and probably Wally's and Tom's, the answer was shake it off.
Yeah.
How's that? So I
You
think
know,
that's it.
I
I
just
think
wanted to
people are
mention,
uncomfortable because it's unfamiliar. So the question, how do we get people comfortable with the fact that it's okay? I mean, we've talked about it a lot, like I said, in my prep days for sure, but absolutely my NCAA days, because right, things start to close in on you, right? When you're playing prep and you're playing your youth, you've still got light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. But when you're playing Division II, Division III college hockey, you know, that window's closing and the real world is looming out there somewhere.
Mhm.
So it becomes more important to have those discussions with your players and telling them that it's okay, even bringing it up when they never even bring it up. I think that can be freeing for some guys because they're saying, you know what, coach is thinking about this. The guy's sitting here talking to me about this. It's okay. I think that helps.
Yeah, and I think I know what I do is I don't even put the word in there mental health because I know the resistance that it still creates, especially within men. So I just always say it's mental performance and emotional control for hockey, because the emotional control aspect is a massive part of the game, especially when you think about how physical and emotional this sport is. Anybody that lacks that at some point is going to become a liability to themselves or to the team. And it's happening at the NHL level all the time. But it's such a conundrum almost. It's frustrating because I know, and you guys all know the importance of it, but to get people to buy in, it's because what most players struggle with and what most people are distracted by is their own thinking, whether they're conscious of it. Most of them aren't, so they're unconscious. And so getting them to understand how your on ice skills coach isn't going to help out with that. Maybe he does. Maybe he does. I don't know. Your strength coach isn't going to help out with that. But it's your negative self talk that is ultimately what's holding you back. And typically that negative self talk comes in the most after a mistake is made, right?
Yeah.
Or, and especially in today's society with the access to information we have, is players are getting lost in comparing themselves to other people that are signing here, committing there, signing this contract. And what happens is they typically get into thinking that they're not good enough, that because they're not having that type of success, they're not good enough, opposed to just mentally celebrating this person, be happy for them and see that as proof of what's possible for you. So I like to the best of my ability is, again, rely on my own experiences, try and create stories that can be relatable, and then at the end bring something in that they can is tangible, that they can take away. you know um I don't like doing stuff for free anymore, but I'm at a point now where I'm just starting to view it as practice. I've done a lot for free. I have kids. I like, being able to provide for them, and this is how I do it. But I don't come from money. I didn't come from money. I grew up, two brothers, two sisters. We adopted three cousins, and so we had a family of 10. We lived paycheck to paycheck. A lot of sacrifice had to take place in order for me to play the game. And so I want this type of training to be accessible to everyone. So if that means, you can't pay in full, that's fine. We'll set up a payment plan or whatever. Or this is my thing. I'll restructure my prices. Not for everybody. If people can afford it, then that's great. Other people, I'd be willing to tinker with my prices. But I think it's life-changing work, and so I think some people's prices are too far out of the range of what people can afford, especially in hockey. We know how expensive it is. But again, it's performance anxiety. So many players struggle from that and they don't know what it stems from. So many players have puck anxiety, suffer from not having confidence, not feeling calm when the puck's on their stick, so they just get rid of it. They don't know where that comes from, you know. So I think in time it's going to continue shifting in the right direction, but I just don't know what's the final thing to get people to understand, you
Yeah,
know.
'cause I agree with Wally there. The coaches have to be the ones that really grab a hold of this. I mean, when I was coaching, it was don't get too high, don't get too low. Let's try to stay in the middle. Let's talk about what that means. And then the other thing is, and I don't know if this is right or wrong. I'd love to have your opinion on it. I would always tell the guys, you're in complete control when you're not chirping back, you're winning a game, and you're not giving your opponent anything to have. So they can't go in the room after a game and say, yeah, we lost, but hey, that number, whatever, was a real jerk. But man, I was under his skin. I was chirping him pretty good. And if you can get a player to the edge and they go over the edge and not you, that's pretty good mental, I think pretty good mental training and mental toughness. So always tried to do things like that. But I think as a coach, you got to realize that that's a great tool. Like if you can get your guys to do that, you're going to win some games.
Oh my gosh, you're going to win way more than you're not, because they're going to, every single game, there's adversity, right? And it has nothing to do with the adversity. It has everything to do with the individual and where they go mentally. And are they able to manage themselves in the face of the adversity? So everybody says, you know, what's mental toughness? And my first response typically is how you can continue showing up in the face of adversity. But true mental toughness is your ability to overcome your own thinking. Do you have the power? Yes. Do you have the ability to stop the negative and replace it with positive? Everybody has that, but not nobody, but so many people aren't actively thinking. And we experience 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. Most of them are the same ones we thought yesterday, and 70% of them are negative. And in the mind-body connection says that what we think we're going to feel in our body, you know, whether you're aware of what's going on up here or not. But so many of these players, all of that just it's all up here. This is the game, in my opinion. This is the game. Everybody physically is so close at whatever level it is. It doesn't matter what level. Physically, everybody's so close. The true separators, what goes on up here when the adversity strikes, when the mistake is made, when a coach screams or benches a player, what is your response to that? And because so many players aren't actively practicing their actual control in their own life, they are a victim to the outside world. And that's always going to be the case until they start analyzing themselves.
Yeah, I agree. That's great. I agree 100%.
Yeah, I think, guys, yeah, I want to simplify what you're saying. I agree with everything you're saying. Heard it all, been there, done that, through it. It's simpler than that. And Yogi Berra's quote for 90% of the game is half mental. It's feel good, play well, quite simple. When you coach, you affect how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
When you parent, you affect how they feel. And sometimes we might not coach your parent very well, distracting your focus as a performer. So the ability to refocus, to get back in that ideal performance state, that's what mental training is all about. And it doesn't just apply to sports.
Yeah.
It applies to toxic working environments. And that's why there's all kinds of leadership things coming up. The need for it is, I mean, there's money to be made. The thing I like about what you do, Jacob, you've played and you've lived through it. And you are taking everything you've done and applying it in a way that will work with people. Now, the key here is getting in the door and building the trust and respect, whether it's a team, the coach, the organization, and the players. That's the key.
Mm-hmm.
Last year with Girls Hockey Calgary, 10 teams, I dreamed and thought it would be easy for every coach to have their players do the feel good, play well form that I shared with you yesterday. That was a big assumption on my part, but in theory, had they done that, they're going to be better.
Mm-hmm.
You know it, I know it, but the coaches are doing their technical, tactical things, their team building things. They're into a myriad of other things. And I'm trying to promote the use of power play and incorporating what you're doing through power play into that. Now, Tom's son, Jim, is interested in playing with power play but they're excellent at the X and O aspects. What they've done in classroom sessions is totally aligned with that app that I believe is unique to technical tactical communication with parents and players. So kudos to you for what you're doing, and if we can help in any way, you know, I'm looking really forward to editing this into bits and pieces and trying to promote it, and at the same time, work with you, Jacob, not for money, but for the good of the game, for you to make money and make a living, making the game better for everyone.
Yeah, and real quick, thank you for that. And going back to what you were saying about the refocusing, I am on board completely with that, but I don't believe that there is any refocusing if they're not understanding when their thoughts have gone back into autopilot. You know what I mean? So that's why getting them to be the active thinker more often throughout the day, you are able to quickly recognize then when it's not you. It's just the different thought patterns that are taking place. And once you can recognize that, boom, you can reshift that focus. You can change the thinking. And one thing I always use too is the breath, breathing, conscious breathing, and how powerful that is for staying in the moment and not even getting lost in the thinking. Just tuning into the sound that your breath is making, putting your focus there keeps you in the here and now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that, the breathing techniques.
Yeah.
You know, meditation.
Yeah.
But being able to, in a stressful moment, exhale and let all that tension out and get back on track again. These are simple little things that coaches can add to their toolbox. On the bench, let's take a deep breath, players. Let's let it all out. And before you go into games, you know all the scenarios that come up. And when you proactively discuss them before competitions, I mean, you could write down a list of everything that's going to bother you as a coach or as a player, and you can talk about it. That awareness in itself, awareness, when it happens, you're going to be more able to handle and cope with and stay in that zone. So there's the sports psychologists are dealing with this in their own ways, and they've taken it to a level of elite athletes, primarily Olympic athletes, where this is happening individually and in Olympic team sports. And it really gets more complicated, but once you go through it, you appreciate how important it is and how important it is to be able to apply it instinctively, intuitively, naturally. It isn't as complex as it seems to be. So I'm really huge on that side of it. And Peter, I think in your situation, I have no idea, minor hockey, whether they realize there's a need for that or how important it is, or but I know there are behavioral issues. So I call this ethical coaching, getting the most out of people to work together and be their best. And I think we need to educate ourselves and coaches and leaders in a board or association the importance of that perspective to the sport. And I simplify it to the point where I'm not distracted by losing. I know that my job as a coach was to make the other team better and the other coach better. And I was going to learn. And like John Wooden said, you never win or lose, you either win or learn. Yeah. So when you have that healthy mindset to begin with, and I've mentioned before, I'm the best loser in the world, but I'm going to win more than I'm going to lose because of that approach, which sort of overrides your
Mhm.
feeling state, maintains your feeling state. So I just wanted to share that with you. My time's running out in life, but I'm sure glad to see you come along and do what you're doing and anything we can do to help. And, you know, you just share what you're doing and I'll pass it on to everybody in my circle of influence. Keep me in the loop, Jake.
Hi, Julian.
Down the road.
I forgot to send it over to you yesterday there, Wally, but I can send over, I put together like a 1 page.
Yeah.
That I can send over. I can even just reply all into that email that you had sent out yesterday.
Yeah.
Send that, I could put my website on there and everything. And I have recently decided to take my prices off of my website because I don't want anybody just paying. I want to have a talk first to make sure that there's a fit, but nonetheless, I can send over that. I can send over the 1 page and yeah, thank you guys so much for your time. Love connecting with hockey people. Obviously, I played it for 32 years, and now I'm still in it, obviously, and this is all I want to do because I know the importance of it, and it's all the tools that I guide players on. It's stuff that they can use in their day-to-day life as well, and that's what's most important to me is they're becoming healthier versions of themselves, and that's going to be long lasting long after hockey is done. So yeah.
Tom,
Well, it'll be interesting, Jim using that app, and I don't know much about it, but my son, we coach together. But I brought Wally in over the years, and with my college women team, and one really neat thing I think he does is he has them with their arm out, and he frowns. He looks right at him, and he pushes down the arm with a frown, and their arm goes down like easy. And then the same thing, he smiles, and he can't get their arm down. And then he also unzips their from the top to the bottom, their energy, and they have no strength. And he zips it up again, and they have strength. And I always thought that kind of neat.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of.
I don't know if you've ever done that kind of stuff, but.
Are you familiar with? It's an age-old researcher on positive energy and performance, and the arm strength exercise I've done with so many teams over the years. Before I begin this work on the importance of mental training, and it relates to if you feel positive, if you feel good, you're going to have a broader focus, you're going to be strong. But when you're frustrated, you actually don't have the energy or the broadness of focus to function as well as you could.
Mm-hmm.
So when Tom described the arm strength experiment, and you can play with this, if you look at your player or your coworker or your teammate, and you hold your arm out to the side, facing each other, and the lead person smiles, well, you can't push the arm down. When they frown, like a coach gets upset, and you can read the body language, the arm will go down. That's the first little exercise. And eventually I go into talking about, well, think of what bothered you in the last game. You got it on your mind, and you test the strength. It goes down. And then you talk about, well, what did you learn from that? How can we shift your thinking
Mm-hmm.
from learning to learning about it? And when you've got it on your mind, you feel better, you get back to that state. And the final stage is a zip up, zip down. And it's experiment with your spouse. I don't care who it is, but they hold their arm up, but you take your index finger and you go down, not touching the body, through acupuncture points inside of the leg down to the bottom of the foot. You interrupt the electric field that's around our bodies. It is scientifically
Yes.
what we're doing. Our energy is good. You disrupt it. So when you zip them down, the arm goes down like a leaf. But if you take your finger and zip them up, the strength is back immediately. That's the wow factor of the exercise.
Mm.
Then when I do the feel good, play well sheet that I send you, that's the formal stage of them learning to what bothers them, what are their symptoms, can they process the difficult moments and turn them into a learning experience, and come up with a cue word to do that. That's sort of probably the most simplest exercise that gets the biggest results with teams I've done it with. And I've done it with Tom's team. In addition to that, I did an autogenic training session, which is a relaxation breathing exercise, visualization exercise, tightening and relaxing muscles, and focusing on what they do well, what they've done well. And they end up having a great sleep. I have a 12-minute link that I'll share with you, Jacob, with my voice. I was in my daughter's recording studio. She's a sound engineer. And I just scripted it. And this is a script that came from 1960. Dr. Charles Vanek, the founder of Sports Psychologist in the Czech Republic, he created this script to help athletes feel better, learn to understand the importance of breathing, part of the growth of mental training with them. So these are all great things, Jacob, and look forward to getting down the road here and seeing where it all goes. But if we can help you in any way, I think experimenting with that app is going to be the first stage. And in particular, I know the X and O side, Tom and Jim are already, without using the app, have their kids using cell phones to look at things, discuss things, and then as a group, share ideas. That's communication. And the rule of cell phones with young players is put them in the bag and pick them up after. They're not very popular. I've seen the cell phone, it's sort of like a tool that we haven't used as well as we could. So that app is going to make it better. The value of a cell phone in life, and you're talking about the importance of the puck and possession, and the line that a girls hockey Calgary coach came up with for me is, coach, players, the puck is your cell phone. Nobody's going to take it away from you. So that fits today's generation, and it's all about growing and keeping up with the times. And as old as I am, and Tom and Peter's been through the mill, and you're still going through the mill, we're never going to stop learning. So, yeah. Peter, do you have anything to add in your wealth of experience? You're working with an association out there and played with some of the things, but it's a day-to-day, figure it out thing.
You're muted.
Speaker, Peter.
Thank you. I always use an expression. I did this with my kids growing up too. Teams I've coached, you don't let the bad guys win. right? Like if there's something happening that's negative and you know that it's negative, we got to figure out a way that we can rise above that or counteract that, whatever it may be. It might be something mental, it might be something physical. In a game, right? It might be the guy that every time there's a whistle and the referee's looked a different way, he gives you a stick or she gives you a stick in the back of the leg, whatever it may be. You got to find a way, again, getting them to the edge and getting them over it, but don't let the bad guy win, right? You don't do bad things for that to happen, but finding positive ways to not let the bad guy win is kind of a mantra that I've tried to teach my children, give them tools to do that. And the same thing with players that I've coached.
Tom?
I just wanted to mention that last week I had one of my best experiences coaching hockey. We had a hockey camp with about 28 skaters and 3 goalies. And we were on the ice 3 times a day. One time, one of my friends power skating, he was a champion in Switzerland, and 2 hockeys. And they went outside for one session, and then we had a classroom session. And it just went as good as anything could ever go. And my coaching Facebook page is called Ice Hockey Coaching Youth to Pro. And I put on about 30, 40 videos from the camp on it. And it's kind of neat. And one of the times was, it's the same arena that I coached Mount Royal Women in. And there's this guy, his son had just got drafted by the Flames in the 2nd round. And so I went over to his pub, it's about 6 blocks away, just to congratulate him. And he came and talked to me and bought me a beer. And then he said, I'm going to, I really appreciate, like 20 years ago, he was converting. He tried to have a fancy restaurant and wasn't going very good. So he was converting it to a pub and he had no money coming in. So I was doing the hockey school, about 100 kids a week for 3 weeks. And I ordered all the lunches. He did the lunches and delivered them, and he had a little bit of money coming in. So anyways, his name was Richard Basha. And he said, I'm going to comp pizza and wraps and chicken, whatever, to your thing. So he brought all the food over for one of the lunches. And it was a thank you for 20 years ago. And that was kind of a neat thing too. So I just wanted to mention it because it was such a good hockey experience for me. Everything just went so well, and everybody was, I think we had a really good balance of stuff.
See, what Tom's talked about, I was there the day for the free meal, and the appreciation of something he did 20 years ago to return. That's why you coach. Might be a guy on the street. And it's just authentic, treating people with respect and trust and supporting them. The 2 words I use with coaches is our job is to transmit belief. And everything that we're doing is trying to stimulate that. We can't control winning or losing. We can control staying on the edge and peak performing. But in the end, somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose. And you're going to learn from losing more than you will from winning.
Mm-hmm.
Just be humble in victory and be strong in defeat. And I think that why you play, why you coach, the purpose of it, the game's going to make you a better person.
Mm.
Well, look, I really appreciate your time, Jake. We have gone for very long times before. Jake, I'm just looking through your sheet here, and I read it again this morning, and highlighted some phrases. And in your case, I've underlined this phrase. I love the person I am now. And, you know, I don't know how many players know who they are and can reach that state of mind. But I like that quotation. And you mentioned that you actually reached a point of seeking out therapy and getting help. Now that obviously costs money and formal time and discussions and interaction. And this is, in a sense, what you do, but not necessarily dealing with serious traumatic issues, but dealing with peak performance issues and understanding how simple life is and simple the game is, and how to get to the point of peace while you're playing.
Mm.
And I really appreciate this, and I'm so glad that the Power Play people have got you working with them. You mentioned the importance of role models growing up, and how significant that can be. You mentioned how hockey, for most people, not most, is just fun. They get out of the rink or get out of this classroom. They get to play. So the beauty of just playing is enjoyment.
Mm.
You know,
Yes.
I know as soon as you mention the word fun, the elite people say, well, that's not elite hockey. Well, yeah. The biggest joy is being successful and winning.
Mm.
And you do it by staying on that edge of performance.
That's right.
I think you mentioned there's a point where I was on my own when you were a kid growing up. And then you went through becoming the person you are, but going through all sort of stages. The fact you've been up and down, learned from everything you've done, not to your benefit as a player, are going to benefit young players moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so congratulations, and I'm going to do some good editing today, and I'm going to stay on for a while. Tom and I usually chat. I want to talk to him about the Calgary Stampede that's going on, and the pictures he's posted. Tom, 78 years old, Tom. He skates 2 or 3 times a week with an old timers group.
I'm a younger in that, Wally. I'm only 76.
He's a puppy. I'm 78, but
Tom, I have one question for you, Tom. Do you have your air conditioning going right now?
No.
Because it's 90 degrees here in Connecticut, and I am sweating looking at you wearing a hoodie right now.
Well, I'm downstairs, and it was 90 here yesterday, but our downstairs is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I had all the doors and everything. I woke up in the middle of the night, opened everything, because people upstairs had closed them all to let the and it's going up like right now, because we're about 3,000 feet above sea level.
Yeah.
It gets cool at night, and then then during the day it really warms up. So right now it's 23, which is probably about 75, and it's going to go up to about in the 80s. Yesterday it was quite a bit warmer. It went up to about 90, I think.
Well, I always
So I was at the
justify it by
Stampede,
saying,
and a big tent. It's called Nashville North, and I go there early, and they're just piping in the music, and then I go at 3, and the live band start at 4, and people start streaming after work. then it gets absolutely packed. So my son met me there and we stayed for about 4 hours. And that's kind of one thing I do every Stampede week. And yeah, it was always have a good time.
Nice.
Jake, have you ever been out to the Calgary Stampede?
I have not. I have not. I've heard about it, but I've not ventured up that way.
Well, 2 weeks the city shuts down and parties.
Well, 10 days.
Yeah, 10 days, and the it's really a vibrant thing. It attracts lots of tourists, but it's quite amazing. And I know I used to go when I started living in Calgary, but I haven't gone since. In fact, I avoid it because it's sort of crowded, hectic. It is fun, it is entertaining, but I just haven't been able to go down there mainly because my walking isn't that good anymore. So,
Well, what happened yesterday, like I could have a place to sit because I got there so early. So these people from Australia came and sat and talked to me for a little while. So they were there about 45 minutes or so. And then this girl from, what's it called? Part of the British Isles, anyways. She came and they were asking questions and that for a little while. So I guess they feel safe with the old guys, so they're not worried about them. So
well, listen, Jacob.
yeah. What's it called?
Greg Revac has joined us, and he's got a pretty advanced technical site on coaching. I would have to say the most advanced one of the times right now. And I'm going to get him to introduce himself to you and maybe talk a little bit more. Peter, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just got to run. I got a granddaughter to pick up at summer camp. So I've got to run, but it was really great. Obviously, always great catching up with you guys. And Jake, a real pleasure, man. I really enjoyed it, and I wish you nothing but the best. And I'm going to chew on a little while in my own brain a little bit and see if there's something I can help to and send something your way.
Awesome. Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. Pleasure meeting you.
All right. You guys take care.
See you, Peter.
You too, Peter.
And just so you know, I've got like 5 minutes here. I'm
Okay.
a single dad. It's lunchtime for my kids. So
Okay, Craig, have you been able to read?
Wally, Jacob and I know each other.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's good.
Makes it easy.
So,
He was on the podcast, and he's a good old Cleveland, Ohio kid. So
oh yeah.
we run in similar circles.
Well, I'm glad. You want to, before he leaves, he's only got 5 minutes. Do you want to do a bit of a summary and a testimonial about what he's trying to do and where it can take athletes and coaches moving forward?
Well, it was nice to see Jacob getting around the podcast circle a little bit. I saw you've been doing some shows, man. This has been good to see. Obviously, you're wonderful and have a great story to share and a lot of insight to spread to the youth now, and some of us old guys too. So congrats on all that first off.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm actually getting ready to start my old podcast up myself. I did it back in 2020 and connected with the guys that were helping me out with that. And I'll be recording my first episode, I guess you could say, of season 2 this weekend. But I got a mic and everything. So, but yeah, no, it was just more conversation around, obviously the great game of hockey and touching a little bit on the article I did with the power player guys and then just talking about the mental performance side of the game, the emotional control aspect, and how we can come together to get more people to understand the importance of optimizing their mindset to only lead to more consistent performance on the ice, which I know they all want, but they're just missing the most important piece, unfortunately. So yeah.
Yeah, well, you can help out one of my kids. He got in a fight in the summer league, so that was great to see.
That's tough. Where's the summer league at?
Columbus.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so some kid like ran into another one of our guys. He went down in the ice. I don't know. I wasn't there because I'm not allowed to coach anyways during the summer league, just how the regulations work. And
Yeah.
I saw in live bar, and he like went over to the kid that was knocked on the ice on the other team, and like went down. Clearly was talking something, and then one of the other guys came over to the guy who like they bumped into each other. It was like the most innocent thing ever, but one of the other team kids comes over and like gets in the kind of the face of our guy, and then he cross-checked the guy. So he was talking crap. Then he cross-checks that guy, and then their scrum happens. It's like, what are we doing? This is summer league.
Do you know the Sisu team down there? Sisu Thunderbirds?
I do. They take some of my players, yeah.
Ah, okay. Tom Latvala is his name. He's Finnish, and so I'm actually going to be working with his 18 and under team this coming season.
Nice. He had one of my kids. So we had the kid's sophomore year. He went and played there last year, and then is coming back to play with us at the high school level again.
Gotcha.
And we have
Gotcha.
a few kids that go play up north for the Cleveland team run by
The
Konechny and
prospects.
crew. Yeah.
Yeah, the prospects. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is most of the coaching staff's just old guys I used to play adult league with because we
Oh.
weren't, professional enough to play with the All Blacks.
Gotcha. I gotcha. Alrighty, guys. Well, yeah, I'm gonna get going here. Kids are hungry. But pleasure meeting you, Tom. Pleasure seeing you again, Greg, even though it was short-lived, but that's okay. We'll do this again. And Wally, thanks for orchestrating. And like I said, I'll follow up in that email once I get my kids fed with that one page there, another article from the Hockey News, and then I did a podcast there on the Hockey Think Tank. Maybe I'll pop that in there as well. But
Hockey IQ podcast too while you're at it.
yeah, there you go. Oh, I got it right there in that email too.
Yeah, and if you've got any pictures,
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah.
I'll send over. I got a lot of pictures, especially from the 3 Ice League that I played in.
yeah, and I'll do some editing and promotion of the cause here. So,
Okay, cool, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Stay
Thanks a
grateful.
lot, Jake.
Yeah.
okay, so long.
See you, Jake.
Talk soon. Bye.
Greg, how have you been doing?
Good. Doing some summer skates here with the high school kids and some of our middle school guys. So wide ranging of talent and ages and sizes. But yeah, things are going well. We're moving along.
Well, Greg, you're sort of like Tom. The information you provide is priceless. So I struggle with how much can I share so people grab onto it. I know I go through Tom's stuff and I'll pick things that I know coaches I'm working with will appreciate and might use. But in your case, I think the game, you're sort of up to speed on the changing advanced game today. And I really like the links attached to your emails because there's an unending level of learning able to go on by studying it deeper and opening them and reading further. But really admire what you're doing and I'd sure like to, have you on again and talk about what you're doing and help you promote it. But I had a good talk with Daryl Belfry 2 days ago. We got talking. My granddaughter was playing soccer, so I'm sitting in the car, and we had a good hour and a half talk about the playoffs and the nature of the game, and we dissected the Oilers and the Florida team, and as coaches do, they go into things pretty deeply. But thanks very much for coming on, Craig. Is there something that you want to bring up that I might be able to pass around that you're doing now or that you've done most recently?
One, man, Tom Malloy's a pretty high bar, so I'm not sure I put myself up there yet, but someday. No, I'm pretty busy until August 8th. So if you want to pencil that one in and we can connect before then, maybe we can do one then, or I can be on for the whole time. But otherwise, life is busy with non-hockey things right now. One thing I'm doing, and curious about your guys's insight into this, is actually I'm supporting Emily Curlett. I know she came on for an episode or two, or call or two of this. She's going to work with a group called Focus. So basically, it's a Catholic organization, and she'll be assigned to a university and be out on mission. So I'm donating to her on a monthly basis. So if any other hockey folks would love to get involved with that, I'm a big believer in Emily personally, and you know, on a more personal level around the mission that she's doing. While personally not specifically Catholic myself, and that's the organization she's with, I think there's a lot to be gleaned from the work that she's doing for many young people who are going through that phase of growing up in college.
What's her title?
That is a good question. What her actual title is, I don't know. Either way, she's going to be spreading the word of Jesus and doing it with varsity athletes at Northern Iowa University.
Well, on that topic, over the years, I know a number of athletes that have become born again Christians and maintain that sort of provides them the grounding of what they're doing and why they're doing it, what they're doing. It's sort of it's not just about yourself and your successes and your achievements. It's about you don't control that. And when you can let it go and to use faith to be your guiding light, you pretty well cope with anything that goes on. So I don't know if you knew, Craig, but Tom was in the seminary for a year and a half. Tom, I wonder if you could talk about that. And both he and I taught in the Catholic school system for many years. And of course, we had to be raised Catholic to get a job. But I think working at a school provided us with a sense of direction about why we're teaching and why are we coaching and doing what we do. So, Tom, can you talk a bit about your seminary experience and how you left it and got into what you did?
Well, I went in right after high school, so I was still 17. I didn't turn 18 till the end of October. I was in a year, and then I was out a year, and I was in the first semester. And I left. I thought that kind of wasn't with me. I was in during the Vatican Council, and the rules changed like weekly almost. But yeah, and I think I probably went in because I had a teacher for 4 years that kind of told me that's what I should do, and I found out that's probably not what I should do. But I taught in the Catholic system after that, and part of what you do when you're a teacher in the Catholic system is you teach a religion class. So, that was kind of a thing with me, my whole teaching career and this sort of thing. But it was a neat experience because I think there was 82 guys there, and we had intramural flag football, and we played outdoors. It was in Edmonton, so it was colder and whatever. But we had our own rink that we flooded and put the ice in and stuff like this, and and a very regimented day. You get up, the first thing is mass, and then everybody has breakfast. Then there was class, and then there was kind of a recreation time for a couple of hours. And then, depending on what day it was, we may had to go in the chapel and do meditation or something. And then like there was dinner and there was a little time on our own, and then we had to be in our rooms and we weren't allowed to talk after 8 o'clock. You know, I had a roommate, so that was a really different deal. And we were allowed, I think one day a week, we were allowed to go into Edmonton. Yeah, but we had to tell people what we were going to do or something like this. I can't remember exactly what it was. There wasn't a lot of freedom, but a very regimented life. So, oh yeah, and in the morning we chanted. It was lauds, it was called, and you chant, and it was in English, but one side to the other. It was very mystical because it's kind of dark in the morning, and your one side chants. It was I can't think right now. From the Bible or the Psalms, I think, and then Compline at night was the same thing, the chanting. So it was and we wore the black cassock and a collar, and very different life. So when I left, just tell you a story of the difference. So I'm in a cassock, and 2 days later, I came back to Calgary and I saw a bunch of guys I knew were playing for the Centennials, which is major junior hockey. And I thought, well, I can probably play with those guys because I'd already always been able to compete with them. So I go out there. So I sit in the dressing room and I'm starting to put my gear on. And these guys all jump this one guy, put him on the table, tie a string around the end of, where, and hold it up while they shaved him. And then they put, I think, a wintergreen on or something that makes it really hurt. And when they let go of him, there was bodies flying all over. And it was Brian Spencer, Spinny Spencer, and he wrote a book about his first game in the NHL. He was playing for Toronto, and he's from northern BC, and his dad called and said, "I want to watch my son's game. I don't want to watch the Vancouver game." And they said, "Well, we can't do that." And he goes to the wherever the TV was with a rifle to get them to put it on. I think he was a drunk, eh? And the Mounties end up killing him. And so then anyway, Brian played for years, and he was always a tough guy, and his name was Spinny Spencer. And eventually, after his career, he got killed by the mob at a traffic light, I think, because he owed gambling money. So he had quite the tumultuous life. But that's just a story of the difference between being in a cassock one day and then 2 days later I'm seeing all this stuff. I was thinking, geez, do I really want to make this team if that's what you have to happen to you? But anyways, just thought I'd share that story.
Pretty interesting, Craig. I've got this book, Hockey Priest. It's about Father David Bauer. And I only played 1 year with the national team. But in the book, he interviewed all of the players over many years. And a lot of he really looked at the family history. And it was my experience with the national team that resulted in me getting a job in the Catholic system. And I really wasn't what you call a very religious person, a very devout person. In fact, growing up, I couldn't, the masses were in Ukrainian. I couldn't understand them. So I memorized the prayers and the Psalms in Ukrainian when I was little, and I can still repeat the Lord's Prayer and Hail Mary in Ukrainian. But when I went to Father Bauer and that team, and he wasn't even coaching, but the team itself, former players largely from St. Mike's, created his own national team in Vancouver, moved to Winnipeg, created 2 teams, and he wanted to have us in the Olympics because that was the ideal of being involved in sport. And the book is about the struggle of the NHL, not letting him continue with his experiment with student athletes. And, I think the work you're doing would be really interesting to hear where it goes. But the bottom line is, we're talking about student athletes. And our priority, while the NHL is the elite model of everything, the most important thing to me, and I think to Tom, is the way they learn to trust and respect and conduct themselves playing a sport the right way and being held accountable and responsible. Tom, the incident that you described, I I don't know if I should edit it out or not, but that's a fact of the times back then.
It was pretty common.
It was very common, and I know when I coached Major Junior, I absolutely stopped having the rookies carry all the bags in. And I just put a stop to that.
That's funny. I just, as a head coach of a high school program, I don't like freshman duties. That's something that irks me. Similar principle. If they've got enough to worry about, we should be all equals here. If anyone's going to do it, it'll be the seniors, but I prefer just we all pick up pucks and do nets rather than putting more burden on the younger ones. They feel uncomfortable enough trying to assimilate to the group as is.
You create a divisiveness when you do those kind of things. It's a ritual, it's a cultural thing that men have created that they accept. And I think, the behavioral side of growing up playing hockey is always very important, probably the most important part. What you accept, what you don't accept, where you draw the line behaviorally, and how you treat one another. I always go back to two words, Greg, and it's trust and respect. As a coach, you breed that, you build that, you grow that. And you do it because you do it for the right reason, and you learn to do it better and better over time. So, but listen, August 8th, I've written it down. I will make it a formal go-to date. Okay. And just to let you know, I'm going to be getting Matt Hoven on, who's the author of this book. And Matt interviewed me, and he's used, I think there's 30 pages of players' quotes or players' statements that he's incorporated into it. And on a hockey point of view, there's a line in here that came from Father Bauer, and it was, technique matters, but let the spirit prevail. And it's sort of like how much is coaching is overcoaching in terms of letting them feel free to play and express themselves. And there's a section in there where the 2002 Olympics, Pat Quinn and I, with the men's coaching staff, talked about throwing away their 52-page playbook and letting the players play. They'll figure it out. And it's in the book.
Yeah, I love that figured out mentality of like getting people in the mind of like, I'm not coming to rescue you. Stop looking to the coach all the time for every little detail. Actually, I did think of one thing. We were kind of going through this of something I'm trying to do, but I have no idea how to accomplish it. I'd really love my dad's favorite coach to come on the Hockey IQ podcast, but I don't know how to get in touch with Scotty Bowman. You guys are well more networked than I am, and I'm hoping you have connections to Scotty in some capacity.
Would you
I know he
repeat
lives
that?
down in Florida now.
Now, what was the question about the coach?
My dad's favorite coach is Scotty Bowman. So
Yeah.
my parents are both from Pittsburgh. So Scotty Bowman was the coach after Coach Bob passed away from cancer.
Yeah.
And for many reasons, Scotty was my dad's favorite coach growing up. So I'd love to get him on the Hockey IQ podcast or just make some kind of connection to Scotty. So I don't know if you guys have any connections, but that would be a really cool thing for me to do kind of for my dad a little bit.
I've met him a few times, but it was mostly my Finnish friend. He'd asked him to be his assistant in Buffalo, and he took us out for lunch one day, and all of a sudden, and I also met him in Vienna at a conference, but I don't know, I don't have any contact info or anything about it.
Okay, thank you.
I know of a few people that might be able to contact him and propose it. I've met him with the national women's team. We were playing in the Detroit Arena, and they had returned from a road trip, and he stood on the bench with me during watching the the girls practice. It was just loosen up skate,
Mm-hmm.
and he just wanted to watch Wickenheiser. So
Not a bad player to watch.
and so that's my only encounter. But philosophically, watching him coach and the way he coached, he did he simplified the game compared to today's game, which appears to be effective and working and complex. I just wonder. My question to him, if we ever got him on, is how does he see the game today, and how would he coach today to get the best result he could? What would he change? And I'm curious about that. The bench management of Scotty was, from what I've heard and read and studied, is he knew how to use people. And when they accepted not playing, and they knew why they weren't playing. So he was the guy that if your line scored a goal, you're getting a shift off, but you're going right back out. So he was able to manipulate the motivational coaching and maintain a relationship in a coaching era that was far different than the one we're in right now.
Yeah. Well, I know Scotty's down in Florida, so he might be near Mitch Korn and Daryl Belfry and a bunch of the other hockey coaches that seem to be down in that Southwest Florida-ish region. I want to say he might be in Tampa. I don't think he's all the way down in Naples, where they have the American Hockey Coaches Association. And it seems like I was flying down once randomly to that airport, and I had 3 hockey coaches on the same flight, and they were going to their winter quarters now that they're retired.
Well, I'll talk to Daryl about it, see if he can help. Are you still talking to Daryl?
Yeah, we still chat. Pretty, especially around the award ceremony. We had the entire awards swept up with the players he's working with, so it's pretty nice. Just giving him congratulations on that, and then we chat for a bit.
Well, I've got to head out now, and I want to thanks for popping on, Greg, and I've earmarked the 8th of August. And
sounds good. I got that in my calendar as well.
Okay, and I'll see what we can do about somebody like Scotty. You know, when you get a guy with a name like that, you're going to get listeners, followers, and hits. And the big thing is just tapping into his wisdom. And I've known a few coaches that, similar to him, had doctorate degrees in common sense.
It's a good way to put it.
And I really think coaching is that simple, like Yogi Berra. It's the ability to read people and manage people to perform well and feel good. And it relates to Jacobs Newton's work. We just want everybody to feel better and play better and be better at what they do. So, okay, we're going to sign off here now, and you take care. And thanks for coming on, Greg and Tom.
Well, Greg, I think you might be interested in looking at my Facebook page.
Okay.
You know what? The ice hockey coaching youth to pro. Because I did this camp last week where I got to do exactly what I wanted to do. And I had my coaching staff and they got one skating a day and then 2 hockey ice time, 75 minutes. Then we did an off ice in a classroom. And having my staff and all that, and we had I think 28 skaters and 3 goalies, and the 3 goalies enabled me to do, like cross ice things that that everybody was active and this sort of thing. And we had to adapt, of course, a lot of the things we do with the team because there's like 10 more players than have on our team. But I don't know if you look, I put about 30 little video clips about it. I think you'd be interested in it because it's a lot of using the game to teach the game. So we teach a concept, then put that rule within the game. And I don't know, it was just the players absolutely loved the camp and everything. And it was just as good a camp as I've ever, experienced in my life. So
It looks
you might be
cool.
interested in looking at some of the stuff.
Checking it out right now on my phone. I like the some of these things, like striding on one skate all the way down the rink and continuous 2v1 into 3v3, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's awesome. I'm gonna check that out. Thanks, Tom.
Alrighty.
All right. See you,
okay.
gents.
We'll talk to you guys later and look forward to the 8th. Greg, take care.
Okay. See y'all.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, well, I'll see you all. You get